Hi, I'm Danny Karen, your lovable lawyer, here with your quick shot of legal wellness. I wanted to do something a little bit different today. Earlier in the day, I taught a class to several judges about why mask mandates aren't unconstitutional, why they're okay. Rather than teaching it to you now, I figured since it was recorded, I can just load it up and show you what I taught the judges. You'll get in on that. And it's a pretty neat program. We hear all this talk about, that mask mandates are okay. But rarely addressed, if ever, is why they're okay, why they're not unconstitutional. Well, I dig into that. It's pretty provocative stuff. I think you'll dig it. So sit back, enjoy a little bit on why mask mandates are okay. I wanted to start my remarks today on the not unconstitutionality, I say that for a reason, of mask mandates with a quick quiz. And what's unfun about giving a quiz online is that I can't see people's hands and faces and all that stuff and who's getting this question, this quiz question wrong, but y'all aren't going to get it wrong because it's an easy one. But here's the quiz. What part of the Constitution supports anti-maskers' position that mask mandates are unconstitutional? What part of the Constitution supports their position that mask mandates are unconstitutional? A, the First Amendment, B, the Fourth Amendment, or C, mask mandates are not unconstitutional. Okay, we're all there, I think. We know that it's okay. We know that it's okay. Maybe we got to understand why it's okay. And it's all about, really showing, not telling. And that's what my remarks are going to go toward. But, not everybody's of the same mind. For instance, if you remember from when the pandemic started, we're going old school, lowbrow today, no screen sharing, no getting myself kicked off. I've got some graphics or some graphics for you. We all remember Costco Karen, don't we? She's the one who staged that sit-in the Hillsboro, Oregon Costco, proclaiming, quote, "I am an American. I have constitutional rights." She didn't bother saying what constitutional rights she's talking about, but I guess she has them. What's more, how about this group called Health Freedom Idaho? They protested, here we go, they protested the Boise mask mandate, where one protester said, quote, "I'm afraid of where this country is headed. We all just roll over and abide by control," which is syntactically weird, "that goes against our what? Constitutional rights." Again, with the constitutional rights. Well, if we want to kind of up the stakes a little bit, let's head out to the Tulsa rally during the campaign. Now, during that rally, responding to a reporter who asked why President Trump appeared unconcerned about the absence of masks and social distancing, then Vice President Pence said, quote, "I want to remind you that freedom of speech and the right to peaceably assemble, it's in the Constitution of the US. Even in a health crisis, the American people don't forfeit their what? Their constitutional rights." Well, it seems everybody thinks that it's their constitutional right not to wear a mask. Well, last I checked, none of these folks were exactly constitutional scholars. So I wanted to really understand the textual basis, if any, for these folks' arguments or insistence that it's okay for me not to wear a mask, the government can't make me. So I was talking to my daughter about this question, back during the beginning of the pandemic when it was hotter than it is now. And it's kind of coming back with mandates going away. Let's remember that. But we were talking, and she just graduated American University in DC. She got a degree in poli-sci and a minor in media communications. So she's really into this kind of wonky constitutional stuff. And we wanted to understand what the basis for these arguments was, if any. So we did a lot of looking, did some writing. We put our results together into an article that ended up getting published with Columbia Law School. There we are in the corner there. There's me, there's her, and she hates the picture, but it's the only one I had. I didn't want to pay for a new one, so we used it. And we learned that, you know what? It's okay for states to do this. But why is it okay? Well, the first really captivating thing we learned when we dug into our research was this. Did you know that back in the 70s, the KKK actually went to the Florida Supreme Court to fight for their right to wear masks? There was a law in Florida back then that said you can't wear masks, because of robberies and stuff. And the KKK didn't like it. They wanted to wear them. Why? Because when they were doing the rallies, and their cross burnings. They didn't want their bosses and friends and neighbors to see who the heck they were. So they go to the court, they argue that the ban on wearing masks is unconstitutional, and they won. Fast forward 50 years, you've got people who call it the same ideology, arguing that the government can't make me wear a mask. They're arguing this issue from the other side, yet relying on the exact same text. The Constitution makes it illegal to make me wear a mask. Well, that's kind of the opposite of what you argued and won back in the 70s. You can't exactly have it both ways, especially when based on the same text. So that was really, I didn't see that one coming. So I've been talking about the not unconstitutionality of mask mandates, not the constitutionality of them, because if you think about it and look at the text, the Constitution doesn't have an article in a section that says, mask mandates are okay, they're constitutional. It doesn't speak to masks. I mean, what are they? They're not thinking about masks back then. But what the Constitution suggests, directs, implies, however you want to describe it, is that it's okay to make citizens wear them. States can make, and the federal government can make mask mandates the law, and that doesn't violate the Constitution. They're not unconstitutional. A nuance that we all appreciate, but it's worth noting because that's where this whole discussion is really headed. So when we talk about the arguments, some real specific arguments against mask mandates, not just it's unconstitutional, but where and why and how, folks, where and why and how, Costco Karen, if we want to engage her, which I don't think we do. Well, here are some of the things we hear. Mask mandates are a violation of a person's right to choose or self-govern. Our ability to exercise our God-given choice absent government intrusion. Okay. And you'll also hear, what gives the government the authority to order me to cover my face? Now, those are just kind of expressions. I don't know that they're rooted in doctrine. Yes, I do, they're not. But that's kind of what we hear. So let's talk about what the Constitution directs. Let's really finally get to it after this big ramp up. Not what it says, but what it directs. I'm careful in my verb choice. Well, masks are not unconstitutional for the following reasons. It starts with the 10th Amendment. And the 10th Amendment, as we know, says the powers not delegated or prohibited by the United States are reserved for the states, and it allows the states to pass and enforce necessary laws. So for instance, since it's a state issue, you don't hear about federal mask mandates except to the extent, federal buildings and monuments like President Biden just, announced, shortly after he was elected. And why is a practical matter? Well, think about it. If let's say there was no mask mandate on a state level in Ohio, like, is the case in Texas and Arizona and some other states. And yet there's a federal mask mandate that covers the whole country. I'm walking down the street without a mask. Who's going to do anything about it? There's no federal police force on the beat that's going to arrest me or cite me because it just doesn't exist. So it's a practical matter in addition to a textual matter. Federal mask mandates aren't aren't at the heart of this problem. It really is a 10th Amendment state level issue, which then takes us to the First Amendment, which is the amendment that everybody kind of clamors about, because if they know anything from the Constitution, which is rarely the case, they know the First Amendment. And as we know, the First Amendment protects the freedom of speech, the press, to petition, to assemble, of religion. But masks, if you think about it, just very basically, don't keep you from expressing yourself. They just affect how you look when you're doing it. Likewise, masks mandates don't require you to express yourself in a certain way, as would be the case if you had to wear a certain, say, type of mask. So for instance, let's say there were a law in Ohio that said I had to wear a mask, but it's got to be this mask. That's not okay. By the same token, let's say there's a law in Ohio that says I got to wear this mask. That's not okay either. What all the law says is that I got to wear this mask. And it doesn't affect what I'm saying. I'm saying the same thing to you as I'd say without a mask. It just affects how I look when I'm saying it. A lot of folks would be happier to see me in a mask to begin with. So it doesn't really affect your message. And if you think about it, what's a similar law that's been on the books for a while that goes to this kind of same theme? It's the law that requires you to make your political speech no closer than 100 feet from a polling place. You can say what you want in front of a polling place. You just got to say it over there. Same principle. And nobody's complaining about that, or if they were, they're not anymore. So if you think about it, all the constitutional rights are subject to the government's police power. The First Amendment is subject to the government's police power. And the Supreme Court has long held that protecting public health, especially with a pandemic, is a sufficient reason to institute measures that might otherwise affront the First Amendment, not that this requirement does anyway. And the case that's often, if not always, invoked to promote this principle is the Supreme Court's case from 1905, Jacobson versus Massachusetts. And the Jacobson case is where the Supreme Court upheld, oops, let me get you in the middle there, upheld a smallpox vaccination requirement in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And what the court there said was, and I'll read it, quote, "There are manifold restraints to which every person is necessarily subject for the common good. On any other basis, organized society could not exist with safety to its members," close quote. Or put another way, you don't have a constitutional right to get me sick, to infect me, to infect your neighbor. Now, this isn't some antiquated notion or proposition either. It was invoked real recently, even in the context of the pandemic, just last year, in the South Bay United Pentecostal Church versus Newsom case out of the Supreme Court 2020, where Chief Justice Roberts, here's what he had to say on the subject. He said, public health orders, quote, "should not be subject to second guessing by an unelected federal judiciary that lacks the background, competence, and expertise to assess public health," close quote. I mean, respectfully, who are judges any more than me or any non-medical official to know from what's necessary to keep the public safe? That's why we have the industrial hygienists, the epidemiologists, all the doctors involved in the pandemic research and measures that the states are following. And if you think about it again, the state has long, states, not just the state, not our state, states across the country have long required citizens to do certain things to protect and promote public safety, such as seatbelt laws, motorcycle helmet laws, no smoking bans. I mean, you don't hear the anti-maskers complaining about wearing a seatbelt on the way to a rally. You hear them complaining about wearing a mask once they get there. And wearing a mask is okay. Now, kind of hand in glove with the whole public requirement to wear masks comes, as you'd expect, the private sector, the private requirements. Can private businesses require folks to wear masks when you walk in them? Now, many states, you'll remember, were slow to enact mask mandates. And as I mentioned a little while ago, a lot of states are coming off them now. So it was wide open, it's kind of opening up again. And that leaves businesses to do this themselves, and businesses and people working in stores are scared to death. Now, virtually all retailers, we know this for a fact because we walk around and do commerce. They require masks when you walk inside. The big boxers especially, Walmart, Costco, Home Depot, CVS, McDonald's, Starbucks, you gotta wear them when you walk in. I was at a Starbucks, the one down the street on West 6th in St. Clair just last week. And I overpaid for like a hibiscus iced tea, and I'm walking out, I took a sip with the straw, took the mask off, and I start texting, like, of course I start texting, right? And I got into it and I forgot to put my mask back on. The barista from across the store yells at me, he says, "Put your mask back on, don't come back if you're not going to." I'm like, come on, dude, I wear 2 masks. I'm like, I'm with you, I'm on your team. I forgot, you're right, I'm sorry, I put it on and I left. So they're very aggressive potentially out there, which can be a problem because consider what happened at the beginning of the pandemic when there weren't mask mandates in certain states and people would walk into retail stores without them. And I'll give you some examples. And these are some grisly examples too. In Flint, Michigan, before the Michigan mask mandate was enacted, a customer was fatally shot a Family Dollar store security guard for denying him entry for not wearing a mask. I mean, he not just shot the guy, he killed the guy over a mask. And that's ridiculous. It keeps going, by the way. In Royal Palm Beach, Florida, a man who wasn't wearing a mask pulled a gun on a masked shopper at a Walmart over a dispute about wearing masks. You've seen on YouTube, somebody gets up in somebody's face about you should wear a mask. Believe me, somebody comes in not wearing a mask, that's the last person I'm getting near, much less in their face about that they should, because they're not gonna. But this guy got really aggressive and pulled a gun. Horrible stuff. How about this? in the Van Nuys section of LA before California instituted its mask mandate. A Target customer punched a Target employee and knocked him down, and the employee broke his arm. I mean, that's ridiculous. Now, I was a speech and rhetoric major, so I should know better, but I will violate the rule of threes and give you a fourth example because it's kind of gross, but kind of fun in a gross way. At a Dollar Tree in Holly, Michigan, before Michigan's mask mandate again, a customer wiped his nose on an employee's shirt after she told him he had to wear a mask. I mean, really? Whatever, you can't talk to these people. But retailers were so alarmed by what they were seeing happening at the retail locations, and the hostility fueled by this whole, anti-mask movement before the states required, them on a state level, that it led to the Retail Industry Leaders Association sending a letter to the National Governors Association, pushing governors to impose statewide mask orders. And what the theme of the letter was, hey, listen, please make this some sort of official decree, either on a retail level or never mind retail level, sorry, on a state level, because we need to have your cover. We need to be able to blame you when somebody walks into our Walmart without a mask and the greeter says, you got to wear one. And the customer gets right up in someone's face and says, oh, yes, says who? Listen, not me. Believe me, this ain't my call. It's the government. Go to the governor, write a letter. I mean, it's a governmental mandate. It's this law of the state. I can't help it. Hell, I wouldn't wear one of these either if I could help it, but they weren't having that cover, that backup. And it's resulting in really bad things on a retail, no pun intended, level. And if you think about it, these customers were channeling the resistance through the First Amendment at a retail level, just as they were on a state level. But the First Amendment doesn't apply to private businesses. It applies to the government. If you're completely untethered and baseless as it concerns your argument on a textual level when making an argument against governmental mask mandates, you're even further out in left field as it concerns arguing this to retail baristas or greeters at Walmart. It just makes no textual sense. And if you think about it, just like I talked about seatbelts earlier, that those laws have been around forever. Well, look at retail locations, bars, restaurants, clubs, stores. I mean, there are dress codes in bars and clubs. No shoes, no shirt, no service. Can't come into a store barefoot and expect service. That's a rule that the retailers impose and have imposed forever, but nobody's arguing that on a constitutional level. It violates my First Amendment rights to have my feet out. But where it comes to masks, it's a different discussion. It's fueled by a different purpose and agenda, which is beyond the purpose and agenda of today's remarks. So in short, though subject to varying state laws, and when I say varying state laws, that's really loaded because the laws on, on proper requirements and restrictions at a retail level are all over the place. Simply stated, unless a private business is enforcing a mask policy in a discriminatory or an unequal way, no claim likely, I say likely because it's subject to state law, likely exists. But where it concerns masks and the requirement that everybody wear them, there's no potential for discrimination or unequal application to begin with. So if you think about, what the anti-maskers have to say, they really offer no textual basis for their position that masks are unconstitutional because none exists. Mask mandates aren't a governmental overreach. They're a reasonable and neutral policy intended really to keep us safe, to keep us all from getting sick. And if anti-maskers would simply put aside the politics that infect this awful and unnecessary discussion, they'd understand that the call for mask wearing isn't a step toward governmental tyranny, but rather a constitutionally based step toward preserving humankind. Thank you.